Welcome to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and I bring you a weekly podcast about alchemy, spirituality, magic, mysticism, and more. Please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like our videos. Welcome everybody. We got Darren and Graham with us from Grimerica. How you gentlemen doing?
Hey, good, Ross. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks so much for taking the time to come on and chat. I like to start out by asking anybody that comes on the show, like one question, which would be, what are you grateful for today, like individually?
Damn, I listened to your show and I knew that question was coming up. I meant to think about it. Actually, I did think about it a couple days ago. You know what? I have a lot to be grateful for. I moved to Calgary about 7 years ago, and then Darren and I started this podcast probably about 5.5 years ago. But it was just I'm grateful for just following this path, really, and just being open enough. I think something shifted in me before when I think back to like how this thing started. I was sort of on a spiritual quest in a way, doing a bunch of things, just to learn. And I think I'm grateful for that, like my willingness to learn, that I think that ended up sort of helping us on this path. And I mean, by all means, like I'm not on the path I want to be on quite yet. Like there's things I want to do, but I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
That's a tough question. There's a lot to be grateful for. Lately, I've probably been most grateful for the people in my life that have maybe drugged me kicking and screaming into looking, taking a better look at myself, and which has led to a bunch of other interesting things that I'm pretty excited about, and taking a look at service and things like that, stuff that wouldn't even have been on my fucking radar 10 years ago,
or even 5,
or even 5
or
years
3,
or even three. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a cross of people, between people we've interviewed and my wife and Graham and and just relationships in general, man. Relationships and communication are fucking tough.
It's weird because all the stuff we talked about, the crazy stuff we started talking about, whether it was about quantum physics or simulation reality or UFOs or consciousness, it ends up leading to this spiritual conspiracy as well, in a way. Like we start looking at how to improve your life, and I don't know, there's a connection there between all that stuff we talk about and
love ends in 327 some odd fucking podcasts. You could sum up the interview with love being the answer in like
half of them.
I don't know about half, but it's over 20%. I mean, I'm talking like there's probably 10% that's actually addressed in the show. That's straight up, love. But I mean, the way Graham's thinking about it, you're looking at it just a bit more overarching. I mean, I'm thinking 10% of the show is that actually comes up in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, for a while there was a running theme that I was just saying, all you need is love at the end of the show, because
that's what the guests were talking about.
Whether the show is on fucking healing or UFOs or it doesn't matter, or quantum physics or fucking it seemed to not matter for a while there. It was always coming back to love and synchronicity.
It definitely, like on my own journey, I've definitely found that to be really true as well. And I want to say that those are some amazing things to be grateful for. And I can identify a lot with both of those, because I never really thought I'd be where I'm at. And it really came from learning and life situations kind of pushing me on a path that maybe I didn't want to go down at one point, but I'm also incredibly grateful for it. my next question to you guys, since you kind of talked about the conspiracy thing, like, and that's like a main part of your show, obviously, what was your first conspiracy? Like, what kind of turned you on to maybe there's something more going on than what I'm being told?
Well, mine was probably the UFO cover up, because I had a profound sighting in 1990. And that kind of led me down sort of like the UFO, that whole thread of, you know, cover up and conspiracy, and you know, then that of course leads to a lot of other stuff. I think Darren's got a different answer than that.
I'm not a big conspiracy guy, really. I wasn't, but my big two would be vaccines and 9/11. I mean, fuck, when we start the show, I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I'm just sort of, and if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't even have opened up my eyes on vaccines. I mean, she's the one who got me going on that. But before I was fully down the vaccine rabbit hole, I went down the 9/11 rabbit hole. And this is like 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, when we start the podcast, I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I remember when we had fucking Karen Hudez on, and I could barely contain myself from bursting out laughing with some of the stuff she was talking about. And now today,
getting into like
I would be like on board with all of it, 100%.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good trend. That's a really good example, right?
That was like episode 6 or something like that. Most of that shit, I'm like, there's no way. And now I could listen to that episode tomorrow and I'd be like, oh yeah. I'd like to have her on again, to be honest.
Let me ask you guys this. How old are you? Because I honestly I didn't really look that deep into it, but how old are you guys?
I don't think you'd be able to find that anywhere.
I'm 48.
I'm 37.
Okay. Yeah, I'm 34. I was just curious. That makes sense with the 90s thing. I mean, for me, like 9/11 was like my first thing that really kind of shook me up. I was in high school when it happened, and like I would say a year or two later, I was kind of looking into it.
I started looking into 9/11 in like 2015.
Okay. Some people still haven't really, so.
It was a fucking rabbit hole too. Like, you got to think, I'm on YouTube. I type in 9/11 conspiracy. It's like, I see Corbett's got the best stuff. Out of most of the stuff I've seen for like an entry level, you know, Corbett's like little 5-minute 9/11 a conspiracy theory. In 5 minutes, he does a pretty good breakdown of all the craziness.
And that's like in the very beginning of your guys' show. I'm gonna have to go back and check it out and kind of see what your response and reaction is to some of that information.
Yeah, I wonder. Interesting. Someone who's listened to all the episodes lately could probably tell you when I start going off on 9/11. And I'm like, holy fuck. Can you believe it?
So going from conspiracy to maybe some paranormal experiences, like what are some of the most recent paranormal experiences either one of you have had?
Did you say outside of UFOs?
You can include UFOs too. I mean, just whatever is recent.
Geez. I've had some interesting experiences with magic lately.
Ooh, do tell.
But I can't. I don't want to. I don't know if I should say anything or not about what's been going on. So we'll leave it at that. But other recent paranormal stuff.
Is your magic experience boiled down to be careful with your thoughts?
No.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, that's part of it, but that wasn't the lesson from it. No.
Oh. What was the lesson?
That it works.
Yeah, magic is definitely an interesting thing to explore.
I think all that shit's the same, man.
Yeah.
Magic, intention, most of the religion shit, the law of attraction, the secret, placebo effect, nocebo effect. You know, it's all the same thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that as well.
I haven't had a
different names. What's that?
Does UFO thing count?
Well, yeah, kind of, but
I kind of had a shitty UFO sighting.
A shitty UFO sighting. What was so shitty about it?
Well, it was just like it was like a fast move when it was like I thought it was a satellite and then it turned north and took off.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was like that's it. You know, I haven't had any other paranormal experiences.
There's probably people that would be thrilled to have that experience. You're like, why wasn't it more?
So I've been going out with I have a Ce5 group in Calgary here that we go out and we do meditations and protocols to try and make contact. And we've had some very good sightings over the last couple of years. So that's been a regular paranormal / UFO thing. I mean, just going out there in a group and actually, I mean, I don't know if manifesting is the right word, but something's out there communicating. Yeah.
Explain that a little bit more. Like what does that group really do? I want to say I've heard stuff about it, but I'm not really entirely familiar with it.
Well, there's a bunch of different groups. Like there's the whole Ce5 thing where Stephen Greer came up with these protocols and he's been doing that for decades. But people are branching into their own sort of global groups of making contact through like Ce5, which would be more of an umbrella term for close encounters of the fifth kind. So everybody has different protocols and stuff like that. But
sounds better as Ce5. Don't call it close encounters of the fifth kind.
There's a meaning behind the Ce5.
Oh, you should have just left that in the box.
And so we'll bring maybe some like the singing bowl out and some meditations, and we'll get into a circle and under a new moon, dark sky, and just try and either do some remote viewing or visualizations or the meditation to sort of bring in some contact. And then we end up seeing flash bulbs in the sky, or we had a couple profound low flyers come by where it's just a quiet craft flying by in the night sky. So there's people doing it all over the world in different ways. And it seems like I don't know. When people say that things are ramping up, like this is an example for me where it's hard to ignore that it might not be, because I tried it for years and didn't see anything. And now we're seeing all kinds of stuff. So
I'm going to have to look and see if there's any of that stuff around me locally. That sounds like something I'd be into.
Yeah, and the other good thing is a lot of people that are just going over there, I mean, they're cool people you can talk to about anything, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of them, there's a spiritual connection there too, with people that are trying to improve themselves and grow and just pay attention to different things,
Yeah, certainly. I know in my own journey, my whole experience kind of involved elements of extraterrestrial stuff and a spiritual connection. There's lots of layers to it, and this definitely isn't the time to get into it, but I can see how there would be that connection overall.
Yeah.
So in regards to like the topics that you guys have discussed, like what's maybe one of your favorite topics that you've had on your show personally?
Like overarching topic or episode?
I'd say overarching topic. I mean, if you guys want to pick an episode, you can, but I don't think that that's fair to put you guys on the spot like that.
I would say probably that's a tough question.
I mean, Darren's into the simulation theory, the digital.
Yeah, and the science stuff and Earth mystery stuff is big for sure. Yeah, Earth mystery, but I also like the consciousness stuff. I mean, to be honest, I'm probably the least interested in the paranormal.
Okay.
And conspiracy, it would seem. Honestly, yeah. I'm more interested in the ancient mysteries or the Randall Carlson stuff, alternative history, or the consciousness research, and which you never would have thought of going into it, but here we are.
Do you find a lot of that stuff though ends up being linked in some way anyhow?
It's all a war on consciousness. I mean, that's kind of what we've said for a couple of years now, as it boils down to kind of a war on our consciousness, I think.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, or whatever, or prohibition.
Yeah. Whether that's to do with, cover-ups or just distractions or people, bunk science experiences, Hollywood. It seems to just be all about some sort of level of deception. whether it's intentional. Some of it's not even intentional.
Yeah, I think at a certain
most of
point,
it's not intentional, man. I just think it's a bunch of people fucking who don't know what the fuck they're doing. Or you know, everyone's just getting after it.
there's that one Terrence McKenna quote where he kind of talks about what's scarier than the reality is scarier that there's actually nobody in control and nobody knows kind of what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I go back and forth between there is something and it's just a bunch of fucking people. They're all making backroom deals with different people, and you know, it's just a bunch of different shitty half-assed balls.
But then when you get those numerical synchronicities and the dates lining up at times and whatever, then it starts blowing you away.
Could all be a fucking simulation. I would not be surprised. It's over 50% at this point that it's either some sort of simulation or game, maybe some sort of video game or some sort of fucking psychedelic experience, or I don't know what the fuck it is, but
it definitely is an intense experience overall, whatever's going on.
When you start looking into, like, when you interview people on quantum physics and quantum entanglement, and they're telling you all the crazy shit that's going on there, and then you know, you start looking at the crazy numerologies of some of these synchronicities, and it's like, what in the fuck? And then you talk to what's his name there that does the movies with the music, and these are like albums that are written before the movie comes out, and somehow they just line up perfectly. What's his name? David Charles Plate. Yeah. There's some of this like crazy high level historical artsy synchronicity stuff, and it's just like, you know, and the different Fibonacci sequences and stuff like that. It just seems like, you know, it's almost perfect. It's hard to, you know, and I came into this from a pretty atheistic standpoint, and you know, it's when every thing starts looking like some sort of grand design. Now, I'm not a big God guy, but something's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're probably on a hard drive someplace, honestly, if I had to pick something. Or either that or we've chosen some sort of thing we're here to act out.
Some dimension.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of like a holographic universe theory or something like that?
No, that's like more of a, well, I guess it would be holographic, but like just
straight up digital simulation, kind of.
Either A, a simulation, or B, yes, same thing. Some sort of high level simulation where that either someone is running or that we're actively participating in. You know, if you hear those stories from, you know, it's pretty hard to rule out reincarnation with some of the stories you hear there. And, you know, you hear other people talking about being in between lives, and this weird soul entanglement sort of thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but it's fucked up.
I can definitely agree that it's fucked up, man. I mean, for me, one of the things that really shifted my perspective on life in general is like I had some mental health episodes where reality like broke down to a point where it was obvious to see like how flimsy even like sanity as a concept really is. And life is weird, dude. Like when you kind of pull back from that lens and recognize that we see things through this one perception, but there's so many other perceptions that we can never grasp until we're kind of broken out of that mold. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense as soon as you try to communicate with another human being. And it's nearly fucking impossible. Like you find like, especially in the, like I notice it big time in the era of text, when you start really focusing in on something, when someone doesn't understand what I ask them to do, and then I'll go back and look at the text, mostly in a work perspective, right? Like I'll send out a text message to one of my guys.
I'm very interested in
blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, the wrong thing happens. And, you know, at first it's like, you guys are idiots. But then I started going back and like reading my text, and all of a sudden, you know, you could see how they could have read it like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I don't know if you're married or not, but or even a business partner or a close friend. I mean, you start to notice that if you really try and start breaking down, it's like, it's tough to get on the same page and visualize those sorts of things.
Like your feeling and your intention when you text something might be completely different than the way they're receiving it.
Oh yeah, or even when you're talking, I think. Yeah. Even when you're trying to explain things, I think, you know, people just have our own story going through our head. And it's just
I've been trying to really get more when especially texting and stuff, like explaining stuff.
Oh yeah, and you gotta watch your commas and shit. Like that's exactly. Because you see why those shits are important. You don't need commas when you're talking to people because you have natural pauses and natural this and natural that. So that helps. And communication's tough enough when you're talking to people face to face, let alone when you're just sending them letters. And if you start like if it's just one big run-on sentence, they don't know where it is. Like, I mean, I'm a firm believer that married people shouldn't even text each other. Unless it's strictly logistical. You can't mix feeling stuff. It just doesn't fucking work out.
Text is a great way to misunderstand each other.
Oh yeah, even Graham and I's relationship.
Love you, miss you, love you, miss you, love you, miss you. Like, you know.
Even when Graham texts me, sometimes he triggers me. I don't know what to talk.
That's why I try and explain things. Yeah. Because you do the same. I got a text. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that mean? What do you want me to do? Is it a question or a statement? Like that little question mark would have done a wonder at the end of that sentence.
Oh yeah, when I wanted the coffee.
And then I have to ask. And then I'm like, why am I having to ask for more information here?
Yeah.
So how did you guys actually end up like meeting and start doing this podcast?
We met at work actually, and then we were kind of introduced to like, oh yeah, you guys might get along because you like these ancient mystery things. And then Darren was in the middle of watching ancient aliens, and I was listening to podcasts, and I was like, oh man, if you like that, you got to hear this podcast. And I sucked him into the podcast thing,
Mysterious Universe.
Yeah, and then we went to a symposium where we met a bunch of speakers of like, you know, the type of people that we've had on the show. And it was a really cool community. And we had a blast, and we said, well, we could just do one of these podcasts. And then we just started it up.
Very cool. It's nice to hear how other people got like their roots and how they got it all going.
Yeah. Like I've been obsessed with podcasts for, it's probably now like 10 or 12 years where I've just been like, when I found out, and this is even a long time ago, like in 2008, 2006, maybe even 7, 8, 9. Like even then I was like, you can learn about whatever you want for free. You just go find this podcast. People are talking about it. And then I went through all different cycles and rabbit holes and, you know, and then I remember a buddy of mine saying once, oh, you could do a podcast. And I was like, nah, I'm going to be good. But I was like, nah, I don't really want to. And then I met Darren, and
I drug you kicking and screaming into doing a podcast.
I even remember meeting Darren and thinking he had a weird accent. So that's weird because I don't think that about many people. And I was like, he speaks weird. And then
I enunciate.
Well, you don't really have proper English either. So.
Like a broken half Indian slur. I'm offended. That's like a hate crime. You fucking hate crime me. I'm a minority.
No, but I think it's very synchronistic that I end up doing a podcast and speaking with you like for hours upon hours every week.
Are you used to my drawl yet?
Yeah. Totally.
Perfect.
And now I know the Bob and Doug thing. And then now I sound like I'm baked to everybody.
Yeah.
I just assumed you guys were high half the time when you were recording.
Not me. Darren, but not me. That was probably the other thing I'm grateful for.
Graham's high on life.
That's where I'm at too, man. I can't partake anymore.
Yeah, me neither. So it's been almost 11 years now. So.
Oh, good for you, man.
Well, I quit smoking 4 years ago.
I can't believe it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe it was 4 years ago.
Cigarette.
Yeah, cigarettes are something good to get away from too, man.
Fucking A.
So I'm going to take a quick break real quick. And then we can come back at it if you guys want, and I'll ask a couple more questions, and then let you guys have your night.
Sounds good.
All right. Are you facing questions with no answers or seeking an escape from persistent problems? Then enlist the Oracle at Mushin. The Oracle at Mushin provides high-quality tarot and life coaching services at affordable prices. Quickly and easily book online with the link in our description. Our listeners get a 10% discount off the Oracle at Mushin's already low prices. Use code OFF10. That's OFF10. Seek the solution today. All right, we're back with the second part of this interview. So I guess my next question for you guys is going to be, what is something that you want to explore or like have a guest on your podcast that you haven't had on yet? You guys have had a lot of people on by now, so.
It's funny, I was just thinking today, I saw Joe Dispenza on something, and I saw him live once doing his presentation, and there's guys like that. Like, I'd kind of like to have Russell Brand on as well. He's got a ton of sobriety, and he's written a book on recovery. I'd like to explore that, and then maybe like a Joe Dispenza, kind of about this, you know, belief system, thoughts kind of stuff, and then maybe get into more magic, more practical magic as well. I think that's kind of where I want to go down more of a spiritual thing as well. But I mean, honestly, the Darren and I, when we started this thing, we thought we're going to run out of guests. We're going to have and the list and the wish list and the people that we want to talk to is just, it's never ending, and it's huge on all kinds of awesome topics.
Yeah, I'm in the process of trying to track down some chiefs from some of the Native American or Native Indian. Well, I just call us Indian. I'm an Indian, so I'm allowed to say it. I'm tracking down some chiefs right now. I want to do a couple interviews of that in 2019, just get some different perspectives on how they view the world, and get some culture instilled and stuff like that. And I also want to do a couple of darker interviews if I can find some people. I'm having trouble talk about the whole Aboriginal women or Native Indian women in Canada and the USA getting kidnapped on a daily basis.
There's like that whole stretch of highway where they disappear, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Up in northern Canada, and they're throwing them on boats and taking
Really?
them out of the country. Yeah. It's a thing, man. It's a thing that nobody's talking about. So I'm trying right now to find people to talk about it, but it's harder than you think. Like maybe that's why nobody's talking about it, because
maybe people are scared about it, man.
That's where the original research comes in, you know, like that's where it'd be nice to have the time that if we had a topic like that, we could actually maybe delve into it a little bit, do some research, get like more sort of boots on the ground kind of stuff, and then talk about it.
You'd like to think it was that benign, but I mean, the government of Canada was taking babies away, 30 years ago. So who knows? It could be by design that nobody's talking about.
Well, and then it just happened in Canadian hospital recently where I think a baby was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, and they come by and they take it away.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I don't know how, and this is just in Winnipeg, and I don't know how, and apparently they say that they give the person a chance to get their shit together maybe, and then they give the baby back. Is that, I don't know. I kind of didn't follow through.
I know some people here locally that have gone through something like that, where they had to go through some steps to get custody
After giving birth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty, I mean, I don't even, to be honest, I don't even know how I feel.
No, that's not an Indian guy or anything like that. But I know that there is that protocol in place.
Even in Alberta?
Yeah. I know a guy personally that now it wasn't alcohol either. But
is it drugs or?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in certain circumstances, that's maybe not as dark because it could put that kid in a lot more jeopardy. It's still not necessarily probably the best course of action, though.
Yeah, that's a real tough one. But it's the people that are disappearing that's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely intense overall. So as far as, I'm trying to think of where I would want to take this next. What's some of your guys' backgrounds like outside of everything that you've talked about on your show? Like, kind of what in your life has led you up into wanting to do this more so? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. How far back are you talking?
You can go as far back as like when you kind of really started pulling at some of these threads, or when it comes up to you. Like, you can talk about that early UFO experience in the 90s if you want.
Yeah, man. I may as well.
He loves talking about this. Yeah.
I was in Israel traveling around Europe and the Middle East. And I was staying at a rooftop hostel with, I think, about 4 other people. A couple Kiwi girls, an English couple, and it might have been it at that time. But I mean, I was in and out of traveling with groups of people and stuff. And we were on a rooftop hostel in
Is that a racial slur?
Tel Aviv. What's that?
Calling them Kiwis?
Nah.
You said that about Abo too, and it turned out to be very not fine.
Yeah, no, a little bit. I think it's endearing. So I was coming up on the roof because there was a rooftop hostel right in Tel Aviv, and I look over at my friends and they're all pointing at the sky and they're yelling like, "Oh, we're seeing this UFO! Look at that! Look at that!" And I ran over there and I was trying to figure out what's going on. They're like, "We just saw this UFO and it did this right-hand turn in the sky," and I was pissed off because of course I missed it. So I looked up at the sky and I was like, "Please come back! Please come back! I want to see you too! I want to see you!" And then I spotted one. And I was like, "Is that what you guys saw?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's what we saw." And it was like a polygonal shaped object. So it was kind of like a 12-sided dice or a 20-sided dice, like a dodecahedron. But it was split in half, and the halves were rotating against themselves, and the whole thing was rotating on its axis slowly as well. And so I mean, you still don't see that shape in ufology very much. So it went silent, and it was about a 3/4 moon. So it went silent, drifting across the sky, sort of reflecting the moonlight. There was no bright lights on it or anything. That was just a craft, a big craft. It was probably a loony at arm's length in size, and it just quietly floated through the sky. And they're like, "Yeah, that's what we saw too." So, I mean, they saw it twice. I saw it once. And it was enough of an anomaly to kind of make me question reality. And I'm not even saying it was ET or anything. I mean, when I got back in the early 90s to Canada and I was watching, I mean, of course I was into UFOs at that point. I was watching sightings. I think the only other time I've heard about this craft was watching sightings in the early 90s. And this lady said she saw the same thing and she was in Israel.
I remember
wow.
that show.
Wow.
That show was scary.
Really?
I was just a kid.
Yeah. So I thought, that's kind of weird. That, I mean, maybe it's a black project or something. Maybe it's some technology that Israel has or whatever. I mean, so I don't even have the answers to a lot of this stuff.
I would explain the
Actually,
Israeli moon bases.
Yeah.
But my question for you then too is, so you kind of actually like threw an intention out there and then it came back too.
That's the weird thing. Yeah. There was that link to the consciousness that, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of even what you're doing now with the one group that you do as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting synchronicity that like you had that early experience and now it's something you're consciously doing with a group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I used to be shy. Like you mentioned about like how we got into talking about this stuff. And I used to kind of be scared to talk or to be shy or something. So I guess there's something about opening up. And that's kind of where I was getting at when I started seeking like the spiritual stuff. Like I had this experience and I think it has something to do with the podcast and opening up. And is I was in this breath sound workshop. It's like a vision quest, but without drugs or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I had was a Kundalini awakening, but I didn't know that at the time, but all my chakras were spinning and there was energy flowing back and forth. And I remember how intense that was and feeling that something is like, I always sort of believed that there was energy centers like chakras, but to feel them, to physically spin and connect was pretty profound. And that's that I think that was really like, now when I think back now, like that was at a time when it's probably just before all this started. Like I think that was an integral part of the path that we're on now.
There's an interesting synchronicity there between my story and your story then too, because for me, like I was really shy before getting into podcasting and all of this stuff as well. And there was a different set of circumstances, but things in my life had to change. And then I kind of just started doing all of this in my own life. And it's really opened me up. Do you find podcasting to be therapeutic for you in some sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I've always been loud and boisterous, I guess.
So this just gives you a platform to be more of yourself?
No, there's a history as well that Darren let us know. Didn't you used to record things in your tape recorder?
Yeah, I used to record stuff with my tape recorder with my buddy Trevi. Yeah, record little radio shows, commercials.
When did you start doing that?
Oh man, must have been like grade six.
So what year would that have been?
How old are you in grade 6? My oldest is in grade 2. She's 7.
10 or 11. So you're 10 or 11 and you're talking into a recorder trying to pretend.
I remember it was like a little red dual cassette deck, and you could press the 2 buttons down and record, and then we could like play little music and stuff from the other cassette to make little spinners and stuff. And now I'm engineering the podcast.
So what year was that?
That would have been like 92, 90,
yeah, early 90s,
yeah. That's so cool.
And then I didn't do nothing for a long time. I mean, I was an alcoholic in most of my 20s, so
I can relate.
Didn't get a lot done. Then I got back at it.
Got back at what?
Producing fucking radio shows, baby. Now I actually have a way to get it out to the world. So it makes you wonder what, maybe me and my buddy could have started uploading that shit to YouTube and we would have got fucking abducted.
So that means you would have started doing the show when you were like 32?
Yeah.
Me, I would have been 32, yeah, exactly.
Oh, very cool. That's kind of around when I started. It's just interesting to see parallels in other people's stories.
Yeah, totally.
The show would be my middle child.
The show would be your middle child, you said?
Yeah. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and the show is 5.5.
Oh, nice. So I'm trying to think of another question to ask you guys. I guess, what makes you genuinely happy in your life right now outside of family or anything else? Like what set of experiences?
That's a tough one.
Outside of family?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like podcasting most of the time. I mean, it can be fucking frustrating too, but I don't know. I'm bad at self-care, I found out recently. So
like the internet self-care where it's like giving yourself bubble baths, or like the actual self-care of maybe like honest self-talk and stuff like that?
The bubble bath. I'm getting better at the honest self-talk and stuff like that. I mean, I've been actively working on that for almost a year.
Okay.
Actively working on it for almost a year. I think with the podcast and marriage and family, all that stuff was naturally happening.
Mm-hmm.
Just then, like each of those things sort of kicked it in a little bit more. But for the last year, it's been my main focus, sort of above all else.
I definitely respect that.
Made a bunch of other weird things happen. It gets crazy.
I think for me, it's just having trying to stay in the moment, I guess, and not worry about the future and the past, and having a level of contentment that I never thought I could have. Like not needing to be somewhere else. Like right now, we're just talking to you, and just having a level of contentment that we're here talking to you, and I don't need to be somewhere else. Like, for a while, I was always wanted to be somewhere else. Like, I want to be home. I want to be on the road. Or I want to be, here or there. Like, why was I just not content with being in that moment? So for me, happiness, there's a baseline of content that brings up all the happiness, and the happiness may stay up and down a little bit from that contentment. But if I can keep that level of contentment, then the happiness will always be easier to attain.
It's kind of like that whole Ram Dass concept of be here now and be present with everything. And when you're in the moment, you're kind of at your most alive and you're happy. Happiness isn't on the horizon. It's not in some distant place.
Yeah.
I dig it.
And I've had moments of what I used to call bliss where, well, I still do call it that, but it just doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to happen as much, where you'd vibrate. Like, I'd get this vibration or this chill. Like, it's happened a couple of times outside looking at the stars, or it's happened while exercising, or, just this whole chill or vibration through the body, which I would consider it like it's a very blissful thing. And you're like super intensely in the moment. And that's kind of like, to me, I consider that really being happy, because I'm not, happy using substances or anything like that. I don't do that anymore. So having that natural that natural high is kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question about that natural high thing. Have you ever, I assume that you've done psychedelics in your past at some point, correct?
Yeah.
Have you ever had these moments without any substances in you where it's almost kind of like that connection that you had in psychedelics of like feeling one with everything?
Yeah, that's probably another way to describe what I'm talking about, I think. Yeah, it'd be that, like that blissful vibratory feeling what could be considered like, yeah, everything's right there right now, and you're kind of all connected.
Yeah, dude, that's a heavy experience. The first time I had that, I was like, wow, I spent so many years of my life trying to capture this.
Exactly.
And just by living like a good life and kind of being in alignment with where I need to be and making the right choices and all this, it comes up naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, because the problem I had with psychedelics is I was always expecting some crazy trip, and it was mainly disappointing. I had some hallucinogens and all that kind of stuff, and I had, but a lot of times
it's too bad you didn't get to the point where
drugs
you
just didn't get to where. Yeah. I probably did it a couple times. We had a couple acid parties.
I kept doing it after party.
Yeah.
And that's when the reverend slips in.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you guys up too much longer, but I do have a couple more questions for you.
Absolutely. Don't worry about us.
What are your guys' experience with kind of like shadow work, in the sense of working on the darker elements of yourself and like bringing presence to them, but maybe not trying to suppress them directly?
Yeah, it's probably in relation to recovery and acknowledging that your defects and your ego and all these other aspects, so that you can start to clean it up, accept it and let it go and make amends. A lot of the cliches that you hear in recovery, but a lot of that is working through your darker self. I think that, I heard a podcast recently about this guy about archetypal addiction and the dark side and the shadow self and all that. It was on Aeon Byte, I think.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh, yeah, it was fascinating, and it makes sense to me. Like, so I feel like that's part of the work. I haven't really done a lot of that since then, I don't think. I'm trying to work on the light side, not really, the shadow self. But I think that was part of like having to get clean and sober, to work through that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. I don't know. I guess that was part of my getting sober too, but not really so much. I didn't really have to work through it so much.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd cross the line into alcoholism. Like you might have drank alcoholically, but I don't know if you'd cross the line. Like I believe that, and this guy in that episode on A Invite talks about it too, and it's what I learned in treatment was this the pickle line, right, where you cross over and you can't really go back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people that aren't necessarily over that line, and but the problem, there's problems, but
yeah,
I mean, you might have fallen under that category. I don't know. Because you kind of just let it, you just kind of left alcohol, but you didn't really and you sometimes do it now and again, like you drink now and again. I don't know when the last time was, but
I had 3 beers in Oregon.
That was the last time.
Yeah.
It was like, so that was May last year. Yeah. So I mean, but as me as an alcoholic that's crossed that line, like I wouldn't play around with that. But you're fine to just like do that, and you're not slipping back into.
No, I mean
drinking.
I just don't drink because I don't want it.
Yeah,
it's just as simple as that. I've been down that road,
Yeah,
been down that road.
So, in regards to the shadow work, have you noticed that when you've done that and kind of cleaned your side of the street, that you kind of get access to maybe a deeper connection with something, spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it?
Well, probably everything.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's all like projection. Most of your problems are projection, probably. Or
absolutely.
Plenty of triggers out there, but you can't fall into the blameism game.
This is kind of since you brought up recovery, I'm gonna make an assumption that you worked a 12-step program at one point.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be esoteric or occult in any way, or at least have some underpinnings of some of that?
Well, when I was, I think I was lucky in a way because I had some meditation practice before I got sober, and I had some spiritualness or interest in spirituality. So when I found out that the 12 steps were a spiritual program, I was quite because at first I was just resisting, of course, steps. Are you kidding me? But then when I found out, you surrender, the principles behind it, not the religious aspect, but the principles behind it, surrender and let it go and acceptance and turning it over to something greater than yourself was fairly easy. I could think of all kinds of things, like the one consciousness or the universal energy or whatever. So I think it was really well put together from a religious but not dogmatic religious. Like they were very careful, and people still take it the wrong way because I think there's a lot of Christian influence in the 12 steps, but at least in AA. But I think that they left it very purposefully open to anyone to believe anything, just to get out of your own self, believe in something else that you can. And it wasn't about what that was, it's just about the principle of letting go, or like asking for help in the morning, like just asking for help to stay clean and sober in the morning, and then the act of thanking something at the end of the night. Very powerful, very simple, but very powerful. So yeah, I think there was some, I wouldn't say occult as much as esoteric maybe, but there's probably some deeper occult underpinnings or esoteric underpinnings about the stuff we were talking about earlier, like magic and the law of attraction type stuff. Like I believe, meditating for sure and praying and opening up that thing is that, like, it's just like what Darren says, it's all the same. It's all that connection, using that, I mean, I think it sounds all cliche, but like a vibration or, whatever you're thinking is coming back, focusing on the positive instead of the negative. I
just started reading the Kabbalion. This is talking about how it's all just an infinite scale of vibrations.
Really? Yeah.
That's a fascinating book, man.
So far, I'm on it.
Can we get the author on, or?
I don't think
He's
so.
not around anymore.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I was just recommended it, so I just.
Cool.
So originally, it's supposed to be translated. It's supposed to be by Hermes Trismegistus or Trismegistus, and then it was reprinted by the three initiates later on.
Oh wow!
I think Hermes is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys can get him on, let me know.
We could channel.
We could channel him. We've been thinking about hiring a psychic for a weekend, like get get a psychic here all day Saturday and channel like 6 interviews.
That would be awesome.
We'll each pick 3.
Is this you and your wife talking about this? I don't think I've been involved in this conversation.
We would talk about it on the show.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh.
Not at that level. We just said we had 2 people at the time.
I just didn't remember the all day long workshop.
Well, if we're going to get a psychic, we might as well get it for the day.
Yeah.
And then we can, we'd do Billy the Kid.
Yeah. Your favorite criminal.
Yeah. We each pick 3. It'll be great. And then we'll see if there's any, then we'll be able to tell how good of a psychic they are. It'd be pretty hard to fake your way through that, I feel like. Just like, you just come in, we've got some random names, and we're going to start interviewing up. No pressure. First, you're Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
You're ready.
then you're Hermie Trismegistus, you know?
Yeah. And after that, you're Aristotle.
So this will be like one of the last questions for real. What is one of your guys' favorite books that you would recommend to anybody listening? Like, what's a book that has changed your whole perception?
I got one on my desk here. It's more like a manual in a way. It's called The Octopus of Global Control. I'm going to start reading quotes out of it, but it's kind of interesting because it's very, it's kind of like, you know, a manual of global conspiracies, like, you know, government control, covert control, financial control, physical control, military control, all the like this, the semi-head and spiritual control. So it's got a lot of quotes from the power brokers of the world. It's pretty cool, pretty thick. So
who's that by?
That's Charlie Robinson. But I mean, that's a tough question because we've read so many books in this. And what do you think, Darren? I mean, you've been reading a lot of the important books lately, life-altering kind of books.
How is that question worded again? Was it influential?
Yeah, life-changing books.
Well, recently, probably the most life-changing book I read was probably No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover.
That's a good book.
That was a big one. And I mean, I'm on like my 4th go through of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and I got so caught up in it that I actually fucking downloaded his whole like 17 rules of success. I forget what the fuck it's called. It's like a half audio book, but it's supposed to be like course maybe. I don't know. I know it's like 28 hours long or something like that.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but I mean, that book is the backbone of most of I'm not going to name anything. I won't get into that. But that book in Napoleon Hill's work has just been sort of spun out and regurgitated by a ton of people. And I mean, whatever, it works on different levels for different people. So.
Yeah, I'm in this point right now where I'm kind of going back through and reading Carlos Castaneda. You guys ever read any of his stuff?
No, I've heard a lot of people talk about it on podcasts, but I haven't read any of the books.
I've been meaning to read some Nietzsche.
Okay.
A lot of people say that. I've actually got the Brothers Karamazov, but I haven't got around to it yet.
He was the early 20th century philosopher or something like that. Very
he's like a Russian novelist. Yeah.
Okay. I've heard a lot about him. I don't know that I've ever directly read any of his stuff either. Yeah, I'm running out of questions. My dog woke me up at 4 a.m.
Did you write the Gulag Archipelago? No. Who was that? You sure? I got it on my phone. You sure? I think it might have been, you know. So I'm not, I never finished that. I got like three-quarters of the way through it, and that's some fucking dark shit. No, that's Solzhenitsyn. Solzhenitsyn.
All right. Well,
I don't recommend.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. One of the things that I like to do is kind of let the guests end the show in their own fashion. So if you guys want to take us out, you're more than welcome to.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week. Like that, or
that's fine.
Something like wise. I'm not really good.
You can say something wise if you want to. It doesn't. Whatever's clever.
Well, we should. I mean, we can plug the show a little bit. So check out the Grimerica show, because we do talk about all kinds of different topics, and really, it's just whatever interests us. So we're fully listener supported. There's no ads or commercials or anything like that, and we just talk about what we want to talk about with who we want to talk about, and hopefully, if there's no massive clampdown on independent media and free speech and stuff, we can keep doing it.
And be fucking nice to each other, people.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the links in the description below. You can support this podcast through PayPal, Patreon, Venmo, Anchor, or through our shop and services.